it for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
S-I-C-K.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. With Tony Marinaro.
55 seconds left in the penalty, a minute and 27 seconds left in regulation time. Boston 4, Montreal 3. Lafleur coming out rather gingerly on the right side. He gives it into Lemaire, back to Lafleur. Oh!
The sickest Montreal Canadiens podcast.
You're in the ball!
Sports entertainment like no other.
Rejoint, on lui fait perdre la rondelle, une passe devant. Et c'est le dégagement et ce sera la victoire des Canadiens. Stanley pour les Canadiens, le 23e de l'histoire.
You found the dogs! John, you found the dogs! He found the dogs! And all together, they worked a young team to the top. And now, a 24th Stanley Cup banner will hang from the rafters of the famous Forum in Montreal. The Canadiens win the Stanley Cup.
Brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. Driven to be different. La Vida Tibi. Embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination. It's gonna be sick.
Marinaro, the Sick Podcast. Hope everyone is doing well on this Thursday, October 3rd. Recorded a little bit earlier in the day, by the way, because Eric Engels of Sportsnet and Sportsnet.ca was at the Board of Governors meetings over the past couple of days. So in order to accommodate everyone and let it all fit into the schedule, we had to do it a little bit earlier on. You're watching right now on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and I thank you very, very much for watching. Without further ado, why don't we bring Eric in? How are you?
I'm great. How are you, Tony?
Very, very good. Where are you?
I'm at home.
Oh, you're back.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So how was the Board of Governors meetings?
I mean, it was interesting. It's always important to get there, be in front of, obviously the biggest power brokers in the league, speak to Gary Bettman, speak to Bill Daly, speak to Jeff Gorton, among other people, just, get a pulse of how everybody's feeling going into the season, get an idea of the business update and where we're going. I thought the most interesting takeaway of the whole thing was Gary Bettman talking about wanting to get CBA talks underway upwards of a year and a half ahead of the CBA expiring. It's definitely a different tone than we've heard, looking back at 3 lockouts in the past under Bettman's tenure. So he says the relationship with Marty Walsh, the head of the PA, is in a good place. And I think that's good news for all hockey fans because I don't know about you, Tony. I'm sure I could speak for them. None of us want to be talking about lockouts or strikes or anything like that as the game is in such a good place.
Especially Montreal Canadiens fans who are watching us right now, because it would be like the Expos. And when they had their power team and there was the lockout, of course, the Canadiens are headed in the right direction. Everyone seems to think so. No lockout, no thanks. And, the more I think about it, it's pretty incredible that we're able to do radio and television and write articles actually when there was a lockout. But believe it or not, we were able to do that. So I guess we're going to be able to do this podcast. It's going to be pretty easy. Another thing on the agenda, of course, was maybe removing a couple of preseason games and adding them onto the regular season schedule.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something that was broached. I don't know if it was discussed in depth. It's obviously a CBA issue. The players would have to sign off on extending the season and cutting the preseason short. I don't think there would be much consternation about that from them. But at the same time, these are things that get discussed over time and inevitably decided. The thing that's really interesting to me is, look, I know people are looking at this preseason, the injuries to Reinbacher, Laine, among other people like Macklin Celebrini, who went hard into the boards the other day, Drew Doughty earlier in the preseason, and saying, wow, like all these injuries, it's crazy. We've got to do something about this. It seems to happen every year. And I don't know if it has to do with the amount of games and the length of the preseason. I think if you played 4 games, you'd still see players get injured. But I still have to take it pretty seriously when you hear players say that they're talking about it behind the scenes and they're noticing all these injuries and they're concerned about it. And just speaking with Marty St. Louis a day ago in Brossard, when he was being asked about, getting his power play working like a well-oiled machine or just a machine in general, he said of the last preseason game on Saturday that he's not sure he'll have all the components of his power play playing in the game. You'd think, having not played one of the first 5 with an entire NHL lineup, and it's being the last one before the season starts, that it would be like a tune-up game. But it almost sounds like there's some reticence from Marty to dress all his top players in a game that he knows doesn't mean much, especially after seeing 2 injuries happen the way they did. And again, I don't know.
Well, that would be wise. That would be wise, especially the way the emotions were flaring last game. I mean, it wouldn't be a very wise thing to put some of your more important players in this game, would it? I mean, they're not going to be worse hockey players on Wednesday if they don't play on Saturday.
Yeah, I don't know if it's any different than any other year, but the rhetoric and the way people are feeling about it is different. You know, it's I haven't heard, you know, Marty at any point over the last couple of years talk about any type of concern about dressing his players in the last game, which would be a tune-up. You know, you'd want to have, if you didn't have the entire roster, most of it playing a kind of tune-up game before the season starts. But
yeah,
I think they're going to think long and hard about this before they make their final decisions, and we'll see who actually dresses Saturday night.
Renaud Lavoie of TVA Sport with an interesting opinion earlier this morning on BPM Sports Radio with the guys from the Club du Matin. Your preseason games, don't have them versus divisional rivals or arch rivals. Just don't, right? I mean, that's obviously going to be one way that you would think that it doesn't mean that there's not going to be a fight or there's not going to be a blindside hit or there's not going to be an intent to injure. But obviously, it reduces the possibilities. It reduces the chances of that happening.
Yeah, listen, we didn't see anything versus Philly and New Jersey, right? But at the same time, I think it comes down to travel. I did see an idea floated. I can't remember where specifically. I hate to not attribute proper sourcing on it, but I did see somebody suggest that when a team travels to another team, they should be taking their NHL players, knowing that that team that's at home is likely to play more of their NHL roster. I think that has some validity to it. As far as the regionality of everything, and
hold on a second. Pardon me. Run that by me again. So when a team travels,
so typically it's, and you'll see this especially in the first week and a half of preseason, teams that are traveling to play a game are not really bringing their NHL players, mostly because obviously they don't want to expose them to extra travel. It is earlier in preseason, but at the same time, the team that's staying at home is dressing more. You know, you saw Toronto when they were at home and Montreal sent their team on the road. It was mostly an AHL laden roster that went to Toronto, and vice versa. When Patrik Laine got hurt, it was mostly an AHL laden roster playing against a mostly NHL roster for the Canadiens. And I think reversing that, or at least making it more compatible, where if you're traveling for a game, I don't know if it works, because then if the teams that are at home for some games and then traveling for others, they might.
No, but I know what you're trying to say. But in the end, I think what you're trying to say is, for the most part, both teams should have the same amount of veterans in the lineup at the same time.
Yeah, you want NHL players playing against NHL players, and those who are battling for spots. I mean, there's always going to be a mix. Obviously, if you're auditioning players that have a serious chance of making your team, you want to see how they look next to some NHL players. But I don't know how they solve this. I do know that if Gary Bettman does not deny that there's a possibility that the preseason gets shortened and the regular season gets extended by a couple of games, you know it's something that's being discussed on the board level, and that's something that has support from multiple sides, not just the governors. So we'll see where that goes. But as I said, it's a CBA issue. It's something that needs to be negotiated with the players, and I don't think we'll see that happen until there's a new collective bargaining agreement in place and effective.
The SIG podcast is brought to you in part by Energy Transportation Group, a leading full-service logistics provider serving all of North America, driven to be different. Also one of the top fleet employers over the past several years by Forbes magazine in terms of transport companies. Check out shipenergy.com, and that's a great place to actually start a career. Mike Cinquino, Sean Gerard, David Grassi and company run a A1 operation. All right, okay. Patrik Laine had a chance to speak with members of the Montreal media earlier today. The Canadiens, of course, have taken their camp to Mont Tremblant. They're there for a couple of days, and then they're going to bus it to Ottawa, where they visit the Ottawa Senators on Saturday night for what will be their final preseason game. A lot of people are wondering, you know, if Laine is upset with Pare for sticking out the knee or the knee on knee, and whether or not he thinks Pare did it on purpose. So this was the first chance to get to speak to Patrik Laine. This is what he had to This is what he had to say.
There was a lot of talk about the hit, Patrik. What do you think?
I mean, I don't think anybody's, trying to hurt anybody. It's just hockey's a fast game, and just kind kind of, put myself in that situation a little bit, and at least try to make a stop. But it's just unfortunate collision, and he texted me afterwards, which was give him respect for that. But it's just unfortunate play.
All right, there you have it. I'm glad I had the opinion that I had. I don't think that Pirate did it on purpose either. And here's a forward who was at the blue line, and he's he doesn't want a player to get by him, and he's caught flat-footed with his feet caught in cement, and he's trying to stop him. And Grant brought up a really good point the other day, and I've actually. And the more I think about it, the more he's right. Like when a player, if he intentionally tries to stick out his knee thinking, I'm going to try and take out a player's knee, you could take out your own knee in the process. So it's probably, but all good. We had we heard that Pare called Laine to say he's sorry. And I think that's pretty cool as well. We were all worried about Patrik Laine when it went down, knowing that everything that's happened with him over the last couple of years and the players assistance program. And I guess a lot of people were wondering, have you been, over the last couple of days, knowing that your season could have potentially been over? Let's hear from Patrik Laine.
What frame of mind were you like, oh no, not again?
Yeah, it was pretty miserable. The first couple of days when got the calls and the diagnosis and the MRIs and stuff. So that was pretty emotional. Since fought back so hard to get back and to get back on the ice and being excited again, and then second game and second shift to get hurt again. But it's just the way it is. In this sport you get hurt sometimes, and just try to stay positive. And but at least now I'll have second half of the season when I come back, so that'll be good.
All right, and Patrik Laine once again was asked how many. Well, he was asked for the first time, but we found out the other day. Kent Hughes spoke with several members of the media. One of which was Martin Leclerc of Radio Canada, Marc-Antoine Godin of Radio Canada as well. They wrote about it. Laine had three different opinions, and the first opinion that he had, coming from the team doctor, was it's probably best that you get surgery. It's not an ACL, but it's probably best that you have surgery, and that was going to compromise his season. He would have been out for the season if he would have done that. He got a couple of opinions. He went to the States for another one, and that one there said, you know what? Don't really think you need to be operated. If you do the rehab, you should be fine. So let's hear from Patrik Laine.
Did you see?
I saw a couple. But got some good opinions, and but at the end of the day, it was my call to make whatever we want to do. And but they, the team and everybody else gave me all the help with that. And at the end of the day, just decided not to do surgery and just do rehab and let it heal, and yep.
And so there you have it. Your thoughts on Laine's decision to do the rehab and just let it heal? I don't know if a player will ever wanted to get surgery over an option of not getting surgery, but what does this tell you? Like, and obviously the doctor that he saw told him that he's pretty much convinced that it will be able to heal with time and rest and the rehab. But you never know, right?
No, you never know. And you never know if you're going to come back 100% after surgery either. I mean, I think there's risks either way. And they obviously made a strong assessment with Laine getting the final call on that because, as he said, it's his knee. I have multiple thoughts on this whole situation that I'd like to try to break down concisely because I don't want to leave you snoring by the end of my answer. But
I have time, and I never found you boring. So go ahead. And by the way, I've been fighting a flu over the past couple of days. So if you could talk for an extended period of time, which means I talk for less, I'll be pretty happy about that.
Okay, I'll try to keep it concise. I'm going to start with Laine himself. He has the right to make that decision. He's convinced that after 2 to 3 months, he's going to have the opportunity to come back and play hockey at the level that he expects of himself. He set a pretty high bar when he came over here, saying he didn't just want to be a 30-goal scorer. He wanted to return to be a 40, 50-goal scorer. And if he's able to do that, given this decision at a prorated level, obviously, because he's going to miss a lot of time, then good on him. And if it helps extend his career that he doesn't go under the knife, good on him again. And these are his decisions. They're nobody else's decisions. But I don't think he would be making them if they weren't properly informed. I don't think he would be going in this direction if he didn't have reassurances that it will go the way he hopes it will. The Canadians are obviously on board. Otherwise, they'd go seek out other opinions and continue to talk with him about what the proper way of handling this would be. Ultimately, it would still be his decision. So we'll leave that there. I want to start with what you talked about in terms of his comments about Pare reaching out, just to say that I think it was really important that Patrik Laine said what he said, especially in the aftermath of some disgusting behavior on social media. I know it's a real shocker that people are acting like idiots on social media, but people, going on his personal Instagram account, Cedric Pares, and threatening death and threatening his family and all kinds of garbage. Those people should be ashamed of themselves, but I don't think any of us are surprised. And to label them with a wide kind of paintbrush as Canadians fans is really stretching it. I don't think the majority of fans react in such a manner. And then let's get to the hit itself, because I thought a lot about it and watched it several times. And I think when something like this happens and all the emotions, if you're able to peel them away and look at it objectively, when something like this happens, everybody focuses on the point of contact. They look at Patrik Laine's leg, they look at Cedric Pare's leg, and that's where they make their deductions. But if you are able to zoom out from that and look at the play in general, Pare is taking a step to get in his way, and unfortunately what makes contact are their two legs instead of his shoulder. And that's just the way that play went. It happened fast. It didn't happen in slow motion as everybody wants to see it. It didn't happen in a still frame photo as everybody saw, which is obviously an awful image to be looking at. There was no intention to hurt the player on this play. There just wasn't. And Grant McKegg and anybody else who is of the opinion that anybody who would purposely knee somebody is putting themselves at risk is probably right on that. I would subscribe to that logic.
Yeah. And by the way, if you listen carefully to what Laine said, and I know you did, he took some of the responsibility for the way he entered the zone as well. You hear that?
Yeah, I just think the shame of it all is that it's preseason, and that I think if two veterans were lined up against each other, you either give them a pass or you don't do something that might put yourself in a vulnerable position and injure somebody else. But that's splitting hairs, because at the end of the day, players are trying to get noticed. Whether or not they have a legitimate chance of making their own team, they're trying to get noticed by everybody who's in attendance so that they have an opportunity to play in the National Hockey League and fulfill their dreams. I did ask myself in analyzing this hit, like, am I trying to be too objective because I cover the Canadians and I don't want to be seen as, wearing their hat or their colors? And ultimately, after watching it so many times, I just think it's just a play gone wrong. That's what happened. And I thought it was a 2-minute tripping penalty. I thought it definitely should have been a tripping penalty. You see it all the time when guys unintentionally trip somebody and they're still called. I don't understand why there wasn't a penalty on the play, but I don't think there should have been a suspension. The one thing that I think some people might look at it and say is, like, if that's Connor McDavid coming down Main Street and Cedric Pare gets him like that and he ends up in a situation where he's out 2 to 3 months, how the league reacts to it. And there's no way of saying for sure. I don't want to sit here and say, well, they treat it differently. But I understand that people might look at it that way and think that way. So
yeah,
that's kind of my thoughts on it all. The last thought that I have, and we'll move on with it, because I think it's been a few days and we already know the outcome here.
Yeah.
I just feel for Patrik Laine. Like, he was really starting to gain some momentum. We watched camp much more in depth than a lot of people had the opportunity to. In the practices leading up to his first preseason action, it looked like it's going to take him some time to physically get to where he needed to go, which was understandable, having only been on the ice for 3 times before coming to Montreal due to his stint in the program and his rehab from shoulder surgery. But what was so interesting to me is the minute he got in front of fans at the Bell Center, his level went up like 3 notches. And I thought that was a really good sign for what could potentially come with Laine this season. So to have his progress halted in such a way was devastating for him, and certainly for his teammates who feel not just about the player bringing them to another level, but what it means in terms of the depth of their top six, how it insulates their bottom six, and what they're trying to accomplish this season, which is to be a team that's in the mix for a playoff spot. So I'm just relieved for Laine and for the Canadians that it's 2 to 3 months. It's hopefully the beginning of a new era of this type of news, because it certainly didn't start that way with the David Reinbacher news, and I feel terrible for that kid. But
yeah,
hopefully this another outcome where it's, you know, it's not 6 months or 8 months, and it's actually 2 to 3, and it's better than it actually appeared, is the start of something new for a team that is for over 3 years has led the league in man games lost.
Yeah, is it a development year loss for David Reinbacher? It's something that we're going to talk about in a minute, but not before I talk to you about Fruiterie Dillard, Eric, because the next time you're in Villa Sal, I'm going to bring you there to meet Tasso, his son, and his staff, because I can tell you they are a family-run business, which I visit like every couple of days. They're a mainstay in the LaSalle community since 1995. And they are proud to continue offering the same fresh foods and flavors they have for the past 30 years. From fresh fruits, Eric, we're talking about like grade 1 fruits here, and produce delivered daily to an ever-expanding assortment of deli meats, cheeses, and sandwiches. You'll find personalized service, and you always get it with a smile at Fruiterie Dillard. Friendly faces that make you feel like family. And, you know, they're Greek, I'm Italian, and una faccia, una razza is what they say, and that's how I feel when I go there. So, the Tasso and Company, thank you very much. One day, I'll bring Eric Engels. All right, okay. David Reinbacher, out of all the things that were talked about with Kent Hughes and Patrik Laine, one of which was, okay, how about the injury to Reinbacher, and you think it's a development year lost? Let's keep in mind that one of the things the Canadians did with Kirby Dach last year, when he was out with that torn ACL, MCL, which, by the way, you reported the day after. You were the first one to do that. I don't forget these things, by the way. Was they had him in on a lot of meetings, whether it was with Adam Nicholas, whether it was with Stefan Robida, whether it was with Marty St. Louis, whether it was with the entire coaching staff, whether it was an advanced stats or pregame or whatever, preview, all that stuff. They had him in on everything. And for a couple of reasons, so that he can know how the coach, what they're thinking, how to prepare, try and sell them on, you know, what they're trying to sell to the players. And maybe so he can not only understand it for himself, but maybe even explain it to others, teammates that wanted to know if they weren't clear, all of that stuff. They plan on doing the same thing with Reinbacher, by the way. And because of that, they believe that his development year will not entirely be lost. He's going to be able to pick up things that'll serve him well going forward.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of value in that. It's good reporting, good questioning from Marc-Antoine Gaudin with Kent Hughes that revealed that stuff. And I think you said it, not completely lost, right? There are parts that cannot be redeemed. He won't be on the ice for 6 months, and that is maybe it'll be less in terms of his entire recovery. But
he won't be practicing his skating. He won't be practicing his shot. He won't be practicing his read and reacts. He won't be in game shape.
I don't know when he gets back on the ice, but it'll be 6 months before he's playing games, and that's a shame. But you have to look at it, the other side of it too, which is that he's 19 years old, and that this isn't the end for David Reinbacher. It's just the beginning. And I think we were looking at a player. He's a really interesting player to me because I think there's a real difficult lens, or a kind of a cloudy lens, that people evaluate his play, the fans of the team that are watching him, because of the fact that he was drafted 5th overall. Because there seems to be a real variance in their opinion with those of the scouts and the players who have gotten to know him and skated with him and played with him. And, what I've seen, this kid, what he's able to do at 19 years old, and the maturity with which he plays, is the stuff you teach to guys as they're 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, coming up as defensemen in this league. And if they have the talent to play in the league, great, but there's a lot of learning to do. He is really well positioned. He's on the right side of the puck most of the time. His first pass is excellent. His skating is excellent. Hopefully will be unaffected by this whole situation and the recovery he's got to go through. The players, guys like Mike Matheson, have really vaunted his character. They think he's an incredibly mature young man and a really great personality off the ice, and they really like him. They see a really bright future for this player, a guy who will unquestionably, in their minds, be a top 4, if not a top pairing defenseman. And, I think if you're able to look at him in the same kind of prism as a Caden Gooley, a guy who, whether the big offense is there will be determined over time, but he makes so many offense-generating plays that his name doesn't end up necessarily on the score sheet for. And like, I feel bad for him that this happened, but I'm not concerned about his future. The Canadians are not concerned about his future. The players themselves are not concerned about his future. And I don't think they should be either. I just see a lot of promise in this player. And I tell you, speaking of people from other teams, come and watch the Canadians. They love what he brings at that age. They're pretty surprised by a player that age at that position having some of those elements that you really have to teach the guys as they come along.
I'm not concerned about his future, but I am, concerned with the fact that once again it's going to be a very important development year lost at a very important age, and
yeah, no going around that.
Yeah, as much as we can make the arguments that he's at a young age, we can also make the arguments that it's probably the most important age out of all the ages or the next couple of years. Anyway, we'll see what happens. Erik Johnson had, injuries early on in his career. He was drafted first overall. He never ended up having the career that a lot of people saw in him, but he ended up being a top 4 defenseman in the National Hockey League for over 1,000 games.
Yeah. I'll give you another one.
And is a Stanley Cup champion, by the way.
Aaron Ekblad had a lot of injuries leading up to becoming a Stanley Cup champion too.
Concussions especially, yes.
He's a pretty relevant player for them in that run and throughout on the way there. So
yeah,
it's early. This kid has what it takes, and hopefully he'll get a chance to be showing it in games that matter much sooner than later. I thought with the way his camp was going that when you look at all the assets he has, Tony, if you had given David Reinbacher 30 to 50 games healthy in the American Hockey League to really build up the confidence that will enable those things to shine through, I think it would have been there. And by the time you saw him next in the NHL, you would have been saying, okay, now I see it. I see what's here.
Yeah. How are the Canadians going to start their season when they play 3 games in 4 nights? Who's going to win on the Wednesday, the Thursday, and the Saturday? Next week on Wednesday, they open up their season when they host Toronto. The following night, they're in Boston versus the Bruins, and a couple of nights later, they host the Ottawa Senators. Well, Betway is the leading global online betting and gaming brand. Follow your gut instinct. Go with Betway. Go on Betway.com or scan the QR code to join the action. Must be 18 years old and over and play responsibly. All right, okay. 1 preseason game left. Have decisions been made, in your opinion, already? Like, who has to play the game of their life here to make the team, and who would have to be absolutely awful and play one of the worst games of their lives to be off this team? How do you see it?
It's an interesting way of framing it, because I'm not sure the decisions are as dramatic. I don't think there is a decision still to be made on Oliver Kapanen, right? There's no rush to send him back to Sweden. Patrik Laine's absence only reinforces that mentality. Whether or not he's going to be the same player he's shown through preseason when the real games get started, when October passes and November comes and you start to get into the normality of an NHL schedule, is going to be determined. It's not a determination that needs to be made now. So you can put his name in pen, I think, on this roster. Maybe I'll end up eating my words in a few days, but I'm
going to support you on this one. I hate to agree with you, but I think the decisions are already made. I'll give you a couple of them. I think Logan Mailloux and Adam Engstrom are going to Laval.
Well, I think that's probably going to be the case as well. And I think the Canadians are likely to carry 14 forwards. And I think the probably the most intriguing, and by the way, Adam Engstrom, all the stuff that I just said about David Reinbacher, as he gets up to speed with how hockey goes on this surface, that guy's going to be an NHL player all day, every day. Like he's going to arrive there, and I think most of a full season at the AHL level is going to develop the elements for him that will enable him to break through to the next level pretty soon. Mailloux is clearly prepared to play games in the NHL. The numbers game is against him in terms of the waiver situation, but I don't think it's going to take 79 games or 80 games this year to see him back up here. I think we're going to be seeing him for sure at some point or another, and it'll be sooner than later. I think that the one decision that they're going to have to really make here that they're going to is still probably yet to be determined is what they do between Alex Barre-Boulet, who's had a very good camp, and Emil Heineman. who has had a really good camp. Now, Heineman doesn't need waivers to go down, and Barré-Boulet does. And if you're taking 14 forwards, they're going to have to decide, would they want a guy like Heineman sitting on the outside if they decide to play maybe a Michael Pezzetta for one game or whatever it is. So those are tough decisions. And those
I think you just gave the answer, though, because that's what, unfortunately, it doesn't always work out that way, but I think they're going to take that way. Yeah, well, I like that Heineman has made it a really hard decision, and he has by playing a very aggressive, assertive style that I think the Canadians were hoping. They knew it was in there. That's why they put him with Caulfield and Suzuki to start the last camp last year. He was a little hesitant and thinking too much about what he needed to do. So it didn't come through for him that time, and he only played a few games up here last year. This time around, he's not thinking about anything. He's playing aggressive, assertive, strong hockey and making this a really tough decision. I don't think if Barré-Boulet ends up on waivers that the Canadians will lose him. I don't think they should be overly concerned about that. He's proven that he can be an NHL player that helps them in one capacity or another. I think more likely higher up in the lineup than lower down in the lineup where he'd be a little less effective. But Heineman is a guy that can help them pretty much anywhere in their lineup, and they're going to have a tough decision to make, even if it means he's 22 and he's got to sit a few games before he gets his chance. So I'm not sure how that one's going to play out, and I don't think they're sure either. I think it's something that they're going to have to think long and hard about before they make their call. But the flexibility of being able to send him to the American Hockey League without having to pass through waivers and bring him back up probably means it goes that way. But we'll see. If he comes out Saturday night and looks, as good as he has so far, if not better, and ends up on the positive side of the ledger in terms of goals and assists and just and block shots and stolen pucks and all the stuff that he's kind of been showing, he's going to make it a difficult decision for them. And I have to give the kid credit. He has understood much more what he needs to bring, and he's brought it. So who will start the season on the line with Kirby Dach and Alex Newhook in Patrik Laine's spot? We'll discuss in 30 seconds, not before I tell you about Bittt Tibi, who launched their new Ultra Lager, refreshing, thirst-quenching beer, perfect for the cool fall days, only 90 calories, 2 grams of carbs, 4% ABV per can, available in a pack of 6 and 12 in grocery stores around the province of Quebec. Ultra light, ultra refreshing, and I have it here in the Bittt Tibi fridge, actually behind me. So, when Jeff Gordon was on the Sick Podcast, the Eye Test, earlier in the week with Jimmy Murphy and Pierre Maguire, when Pierre Maguire asked Jeff who he would see in Patrik Laine's spot, he named Kapanen, he named Joshua Roy, he named Yoel Armia. I think in the end, he actually mentioned Gallagher too, if I'm not mistaken. But the first name to come out of his mouth was Oliver Kapanen. I don't think that's a coincidence. Now, ultimately, it's not going to be Jeff Gordon that decides. It'll be Marty St. Louis, who actually, when he was asked about it, even included Josh Anderson's name in the list, which Gorton did not, by the way, and we'll get on that. And Oliver Kapanen now has played the wing in his last game with the Montreal Canadiens in preseason. Who do you think is in pole position right now, and why? It's a really difficult question to answer, specific to what Marty said about his lineup for Saturday night and how he's undecided about it. I'd be a little surprised if Kirby Dach is playing that game. He's gotten his reps in, he's played enough games, and I don't know if Marty wants to expose him any further and just let the games come when they come. So we may not get a real indication of somebody getting a trial there. Like we already saw the Roy Armia Dach line together. I don't know about you, I was impressed, and that's that. I don't know what that means for Alex Newhook, but those guys had the puck on their sticks in the offensive zone a lot. So there's multiple options. If I had to handicap it, I think to start, I think game 1 against Toronto, the most likely scenario, and I don't know how people are going to feel about it, but I think it'll be Alex Newhook, Kirby Dach, Yoel Armia. I think so too. And it's starting the season in a conservative way. And they're playing back to back, so that could change by the following night. Yeah. But I don't think you're putting
Kapanen in a place where he can't be successful if he's playing one line down with Christian Dvorak and with Joshua Waugh, where him and Dvorak will split center duties on their strong sides, and he's playing with an offensive player in Waugh, and Dvorak has had a good camp. Like, I know people don't see that.
He has. Joshua Waugh has not had a good camp, I don't think. I think that Barry Boulet's camp has been a notch above. I think that Heineman's camp has been a notch above Joshua Roy's. I think that Oliver Kapanen's camp has been a notch above Joshua Roy. That doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean I'm going to give up on Joshua Roy, but it does mean, because I like him very much.
I just want to,
but I will say that at this stage of his career, I'm a little bit disappointed that he didn't approach the camp with maybe a little bit more intensity, because it's a big camp for him.
I think I understand that perception. I don't think you're alone in it. But I would caution that a training camp consists of many more practices than games. And there have been many things we've seen in practice that suggest that Joshua was right where you expect him to be. So I'm not really concerned about it. I don't share the opinion that he hasn't had a good camp. I don't think he's blowing the doors off offensively in the preseason, by any stretch of the imagination. And so I understand how this perception could become pervasive. I don't think anybody's had like a bad camp. I've heard people say Jack Guy hasn't had a good camp, and I think there's been his moments where they're having been good. Before he got thrown out of the last game against Ottawa, he was playing a very good game.
Well, there's a lot of students that work hard in school and they study, but when they take the exam, if they fail the exam, ultimately they fail. It's not what they did to prepare for it.
But if you consider the preseason game for a guy who's pretty much secured a spot on the NHL roster to be the exam, then
how secure is that spot? Look, he's on the team. Okay, there's no doubt he's on the team.
It's not a granted. It's not a given. He's still a young player who has to earn his way to wherever he's going to be. But I think I would have a hard time betting against the notion that Joshua was going to be starting the season with the Canadiens and in the opening night lineup. I'd be very surprised.
Marinaro for Playground. If you're looking for the ultimate entertainment experience, Playground has it all. Gaming, poker, fine dining, live music, DJs, all with unmatched customer service. Why go anywhere else? Just minutes from downtown Montreal, across the Mercier Bridge. Playground, your top destination for fun. Eric, this has been a lot of fun. In ending, once again, a couple of nights before the final preseason game, what are you going to be looking at? We don't really know who's going to be playing in it yet. We do have a feeling, of course, that young players will be playing in it because there's a spot to be had or not for them. What are you going to have your eyes on?
Two things. Probably the biggest determinants in the Canadiens' ability to keep things on the rail, remain competitive while they're waiting for Laine to get healthy. One, that everybody makes it out of that game unscathed. That's going to be the most important thing. I should have said three things. Two, my eyes are going to be squarely on the goalie, whoever it is, whether it's Primo or Montembeault. You talk about the exam, that one is an exam. I want to make sure, if I'm the coach of the Canadiens, that those guys look and feel good going into the season, whoever it is. I think it'll be Montembeault since Primo played the last game, right? So,
you know what? I tell you this, it's probably a little bit of an odd opinion, but I'll give it to you anyway. I think Montembeault has already passed the exam, and I don't think Primo has in preseason. So I'd either give it to Primo again to show me what he can do. And if I didn't give it to Primo, I'd probably give it to Dobish, by the way. But listen, I'd like to see Primo in there to redeem him. Look, he didn't play terrible last game. I mean, the 4 goals that he gave up were all shorthanded for the Canadiens. I mean, Ottawa scored 4 power play goals, but I'm not worried about Montembeault going into the season. But I think Primo's got to be a lot better going into the season.
Yeah, I'm not worried about Primo at all. I would predict that I think he's going to have a pretty strong year. That's my sense on Caden Primo. I'm sure it'll be debated, but that's my feeling on Caden.
Basing
Primo.
It on?
Just knowing the player, knowing what he's about, knowing how much of a pro he is, knowing the steps that he took last year, how he looked towards the end of the season. Don't put much weight in him coming in halfway through a game, letting in 1 bad goal against Toronto. Didn't think that the game in Ottawa, with 3 power play goals going in, was on him. Not concerned, really, but people can debate that, and that's the fun of this. And you ask me what I'm looking at. The third thing is obviously some sort of cohesion on the special teams, and I think it's too early to judge. I know people are really worried about it. I know Marty himself, feels there's a lot of work to be done there. There's one more thing that I'm watching towards the end of this camp, and I'm curious about, that I'll probably ask Martin about tomorrow when I get to Tremblant. They haven't practiced 3-on-3 or the shootout at all. And I just think these are situations when you look at a team that had the most one-goal games in the league last year.
That's a good one. They're going to be in that situation often, you would think.
You would think. And let's face it, I think goaltending was probably the biggest component in them being as many of those games. But this year, I think there should be a few other reasons that they're in as many of those games. And if they want to win them, those are situations that they better have a strong handle on. And I know when it comes to 3-on-3, a lot of that can be sorted out in the video room, and I'm sure a lot of it is, and I'm sure it's been touched on. But repetition is always a good idea one way or another. I haven't seen any of it so far in this camp, unless I missed it, and haven't seen any practicing of the shootout, even if the Canadians have good guys for that department. So I just think, considering how many one-goal games there were, it's going to be something that I wonder over the remaining days of camp if it's something that's touched on.
A shout out to Pau Montreal, and check them out. Pau Esthétique Médicale, 2 locations. Downtown Montreal is one, and in the West Island is the other. Dr. Manish Khanna and his team, they use the latest cosmetic technologies for laser, injections, fillers, body contouring, or facial treatments. I haven't had the body contouring yet, by the way. You probably wouldn't have noticed. But check out Pau Montreal on Instagram, at Pau Montreal. Call them. By the way, they also have an incredible technology for hair loss, which is called TED, which they can inform you about. They give you a free consultation. Call 514-989-7328 or jot the number down and give them a call tomorrow, obviously, if you can. All right. In ending, you talked about Primo, and you said that, you're quite confident he's going to have a good season. The Canadians want to be in the mix. And if the Canadians are going to be in the mix, there's a lot of things that are going to have to happen. And one, they're going to have their special teams total 100 or more. Number two, they're going to have to be healthy, which they haven't been in the last 3 years that you pointed out. You've had some stats to support that. They've been the most injured team in the National Hockey League when you sum it all up over the last 3 years. And number three, and not in no any particular order, but I think the goalies really have to take another step. They took a step last year, and I think they even have to take another step, right? When your team is not a very strong team, you're going to face a lot of rubber. When your penalty kill is not the strongest, you're going to face a lot of rubber. And
I think they just can't step back. I don't think they necessarily have to raise it another level. They need to not step back. I want to say this on the goaltending.
But if they raise it a notch, though, they can get that penalty kill percentage up, which can give them a better opportunity of summing up that 100 or more, right?
I think they can. And I think they can. One of the reasons for my confidence outside of Primo, Montembeault has gotten himself into better shape coming into this camp. He was on the ice the other day. Nobody was around. 2.5 hours.
Wow.
He is taking the gym very seriously. He feels he's a bit more explosive going post to post. And Team Canada is a big goal for him. He wants to be in the mix for a position there, one of the three, if not a guy who they look at after the World Championship performance from 2 years ago that they feel could win for them. Whether or not he ends up in that chair is not fully up to him. That's for sure. But I have confidence in the Canadians' goaltending. I don't think there's much reason to doubt it, but they can't take a step back. They can't take even a baby step back, because that would be big trouble for this team.
Yeah, but when Pierre LeBrun says that, they inquired for Askarov, and they were going to, the Nashville Predators asked for Jacob Fowler, and the Canadians said thanks, but no thanks. When Pierre LeBrun says that, that leads me to believe that the Canadians want to upgrade their goaltending position.
No, I think the Canadian. I get that, but I think when the Canadians hear of a young, talented player who fits within the age range of 2 potential cores that could deliver them years of contention, they're going to be in on the conversation just about every time. That's just the way Kent Hughes operates. So I don't read so deeply into that.
I hear you.
Ultimately, it didn't end up here because they definitely were not going to give up not just Jacob Fowler, but what Nashville would have expected to get back in trading Askarov. I have one question for you before we end.
Yeah, look, I think in the end we can all agree it's a big year for Primo, period.
It's a big year for both of them. They both got to be up there. Dobish showed that he's a guy that has come a long way in 1 year, and it'd be interesting to see where he goes in another year. One question for you, because I think it was such a big theme over the last 2 years, and it's almost been not talked about at all so far, which I think is a good thing. Justin Barron's camp. What do you make of what you've seen from him and his ability to potentially take his game to a next level? Because I think you'd agree, big part of this team, right, is Gulu, Jack-Eye, and Barron, all leaning on the experience that they've gained so far, all between 95 and 120 games between them, bringing it to another level.
Okay.
And I think he's ready to do that.
I think Barron's camp has been relatively quiet. And for some players, I don't think that's a bad thing. And in his case, I don't think that's a bad thing. All right. At the end of the day, I think that there will be a rotation, and Barron will be one of the players that will be rotated. And maybe Arbor Jack is able to keep himself in the lineup longer than some of the other guys because he's that nuclear deterrent that you need. I think Lane Hudson's going to watch some games from the press box. I think he's on the team. He'll watch some games from the press box. I think Barron will watch some games from the press box. I think Struble will watch some games from the press box. Maybe less Jack-Eye. But I really like Struble's camp. I know you asked me about Barron, but I really like Struble's camp.
I really like Struble's last game. I don't think his camp was on that level, but it was good to see him elevate to that level and show that that is who he is and what he can be. That was solid. Hudson sitting out games. I don't know if I'd be betting on that. But
load management. We talked about it. Load management, load management, like what the Anaheim Ducks were.
Like if you're playing back to back. I think Hudson's going to be in the race for the Calder Trophy. I think we've talked about it, starting as a star, and I think he's on his way to potentially becoming a superstar in this league within a few years.
If he plays all the games, I will agree with you that he's going to be in contention for the Calder Trophy. I think he's the real deal too. I went out last week and said, I don't know how many times it's going to happen in his career, but if I were a betting man, I would go on, I would go on Betway right now, and I would bet that at one point, Lane Hudson will have a season where he'll pick up 82 points. Like, I really believe that. And once again, and what's tough about podcasts is that this stuff is out there. It's in a library called YouTube,
it lives forever.
Or Facebook and Twitter, and it lives forever. And a lot of people are probably going to come back to tell me I'm an idiot, because I know this. If I'm going to get it wrong, they will tell me I'm an idiot. And if I'm going to get it right, I'm not going to hear from anybody. That's just the way it is. Eric Engels, thanks so much, my man. I hope I hear from you. I'll talk to you again next week.
Take care, Tony.
Thanks to everyone watching, and thanks again, once again, to all of our partners, whether it's Energy Transportation Group, it's Bittt at Tibi, whether it's Playground, whether it's Betway, or whether it's Fruiterie de Lard. And once again, we thank all of them for their support. And if you really want to help us, I say this, support those who support us. So if you're going to go out and buy some fruit, buy it at Fruiterie de Lard. If you want to get in on the action and put $1 down or $2, do it with Betway. If you want to have a night out of poker and fine dining and live music and DJs and all that fun, go to Playground. If you want to have a beverage, check out Bittt TB and have one of those, whether it's the low carb 1 or 2% or the 5% or whatever. And if you're going to move product, Energy Transportation Group are the ones to call. Special thanks once again to all of you for watching us. If you like it, comment 6, share it with your friends, leave us a 5-star review on Apple. It's our way of feeling the love. For Shane Gaumont, Master Control, it's the Sick Podcast. I'm Marinaro.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. The Sick Podcast is brought to you by Energy Transportation Group, driven to be different. LaBita.tb, embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination.